See if this works. Oh yeah, awesome. Okay. Hi, welcome everybody. I'm going to talk to you about how to make a mobile-first website or have a mobile-first approach while you are in an Agile workflow. I'm going to try to explain to you what I think about that, how the Agile workflow combines with a responsive website, and how you can do your best in that. This is me. This is my information in case you need to contact me later about any of these slides. First, I'll tell something about Netvlies. This is the newspaper article that was somewhere in the newspaper here in Breda when the company was started. Two of these people actually still work here, which is Jeroen and Jochem. They made Netvlies as an internet company in 1997. It was very, they were very young back then, of course, so it was quite a happening. And we spin fast for like 18 years, I think, almost 19. We are the company that has 44 people, 44 professionals, communicative guys and girls, and we have 18 years of experience now in making online stuff, so applications, websites, API, anything that goes with a company. So we're basically an online partner that works with the company to create, well, the best we think we can. That's a little part about us. About the presentation, what I am trying to do is to give an image of what responsibly responsive is in an agile environment. So imagine you are working not in a waterfall project. I hope these terms are familiar with you. But in like a Scrum project, for example, where you are working in a multidisciplinary team, where you don't have a design, but you're going to work with the client in a team, and going to have stories, planning poker, all that kind of Scrum stuff that is going to improve your workflow. Maybe you think, well, why is there no mobile first on this slide? I thought we were going to see a mobile first talk. Well, mobile first is, in my opinion, is responsibly responsive. So you may think, why is it not here? But it is definitely coming back. How are we going to look at this? We're going to see some definitions of things that I have, so we're on the same page and that we are talking about the same things. And next, I'm going to try to say what an Agile workflow means for this, means for responsive, and have a short explanation about Agile, about what Agile is, and how you can then create a front end with these principles that are named before. In the end, we'll do some conclusions and questions. So the first part, I thought it was smart to have some definitions of responsive and mobile first, because maybe we're not all on the same page about it. This is an article that started kind of the responsive web design back in 2010 by Ethan Marcotte. He's a funny guy on Twitter, you can follow him there if you want. Maybe you remember this article, it's quite old in internet time, but this is the thing that started kind of the whole responsive web design stuff. Media queries, that kind of coding. This is a quote from this article. You see that he's trying to explain the concept of why are we still making iPad websites, or why are we still making a one device website for the Nokia 90 instead of having one website that is good for all the devices that visit it. So that's really kind of strange to think now that this was then not normal back then. You see here, this is trying to explain that website should be a demo. This is a nice image that illustrates the variety of devices that comes to websites that I sometimes show it to clients, or I look at it myself because I think it's kind of a nice picture. Could be an artwork maybe. But it's the variety of the screen sizes that comes to people's websites, and that shows why you should actually have a responsive website. So now we're stuck with this, kind of. We have to make responsive websites because this is the reality. You can show your website on all these devices, maybe except for this black and white Game Boy that is here. I'm not sure if it has internet connection.
It has, that one.
It has? Okay.
In the browser, especially for that Game Boy.
Okay. I have to check our website then on the Game Boy. I'm not sure if it works. It doesn't have JavaScript, I believe. But anyway, this is the situation we are in now. So that's kind of a great change in respect to what we first had with just static websites. So I tried to make a definition about what is responsive, so we can all agree on this. Like creating a website in a device agnostic way, I think is the basis. So it doesn't matter what device you use, doesn't matter if you're on a TV or your iPhone or your computer. It's just a website that you can see it, content, and its interface is usable. So there's a good usability. At the same time, I want to clarify some terms, because there are sometimes discussions about this on the internet. Like, is my responsive website, can I call it also adaptive? Or is my fluid layout, is it actually also liquid, or does that not count? Or is my large phone, does it count as a large phone, or does it actually count as a small tablet? Well, the truth is, I think, my opinion is that this is actually all the same. It doesn't really matter what you call it. There's no book that somebody created that said, well, this term means this, and this term means that, and this term means this. I think let's just call it all responsive. It's a nice name. It doesn't matter if it's actually liquid or fluid, or I don't even know the difference, so let's just call it responsive and don't confuse our clients with the extra terms. To illustrate what responsive actually is in your page, I found this funny website. Sorry for the skelde in between, for the curse words. Yeah. All web pages are by default responsive. This is to remind us of that actually you don't have to put effort in making something responsive. I can make a responsive website in like 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Because when you take a text and you create an index.html, you put the text in the HTML document, it's by definition responsive. You can go to this website here, click it. This is the website. It's a motherfucking website. It was kind of a joke to see how you can make a very good website. It's very lightweight, it fits on all the screens, it's very readable, interaction is very good. You can actually do everything with it. And if I would now smaller this window, make this window smaller and put it here, the content would adjust to my window and it would perfectly fit everywhere. So in this responsive website went like 0 seconds of work. So that's what the quote means, is what you are doing to your website is your fault, actually. If it's not responsive, you should think about if you have done the right things to come there. Is there anybody who disagrees with me at this point, who says I have a different definition about responsive, or is this clear? No questions? So, okay, cool. I show this image to see that, of course, this width of the website is the tip of the iceberg, is this part. There's a large part of what can fall under the term responsive with exclusion of the width of the page. To explain what I mean is, let's look at this tweet that Luke Wroblewski tweeted about. In an open signal study, they found in 6 months there were 3,997 different devices that downloaded or that visited their website, that downloaded their app. All these devices don't have only different widths, but they also have different aspects, like what is their CPU, what is their GPU, what is their capability, what are their capabilities, do they have a camera or not, can they make sound or not. There's a lot of things that are different from these devices other than screen resolution. Those are the device capabilities. This is a quote from Scott Gill in his book Responsive Web Design. And he explains here that the device width is one of the points, and that there are also accessibility issues to take into account, and of course the speed of your website also belongs under the term responsive, because when your website takes 8 seconds to load on your mobile phone, you can't really call it responsive. Now we have to move on to, now we know what responsive is, we have to move on to mobile first. Why would you want to do it mobile first? Well, to make it future-proof for all these kinds of devices that we have seen. How do you explain mobile first to a person that doesn't know this term? I found this analogy, and it goes like if you have a large house with a lot of stuff, and you try to move into a small house, it's very difficult. Because if you have a lot of stuff, you have to fit it into a house, it doesn't fit. You have to stack it, you have to throw stuff away, which is bad in the website case. It's much easier if you have a small house with a small amount of stuff. You move into a villa, a nice large house, you can place all the stuff there and even more. That's the analogy that Clarissa Peterson made in an article. It's kind of useful to explain to clients what mobile first means. Also, this image explains the same. Why would you start on a desktop and then try to fit all the stuff that you have in this small screen we have to adjust for this small screen, when instead, if you begin with the small screen, you make it larger, it's much easier to adjust for all the devices that you can think of that come after this. Also the devices that do not exist already. Maybe there comes a new device, a watch, a TV, these glasses that you can wear with internet in them. You also want to compensate for those sizes. This is my personal analogy for a mobile first approach. Suppose if this guy is your desktop website, then this little underwear is your user's mobile browser. Why is this? Because this guy has so much power, has so much features, he is so powerful, and he almost breaks out of his clothes here. The little pants can't handle this thing. So it's also about performance. It's about what can the device handle in these situations. And I found a nice movie of this by Luke Wroblewski, the same guy who tweeted. I'm going to show it to you guys. So I will start it. I hope the sound works.
And then shrink things down as screen size gets smaller. So a maps interface with an embedded set of controls will shrink down until it becomes almost unusable on small screen sizes. Not only is it hard to interact within this amount of screen space, but the additional bandwidth and download costs associated with all this JavaScript and imagery are something that our poor mobile devices can't handle very well. What we're seeing in effect is starting from the large screen experience first, making concessions for smaller and smaller screens, but really trying to force the enhanced experience down to everyone, regardless of whether they can handle it or not. As a counterexample, let's look at an adaptive map solution. Here, we start with a mobile-first default. That is, instead of an embedded map full of interactivity, it's just a little image showing the same information. This image is really lightweight, can display anywhere, and doesn't incur heavy bandwidth costs. We can also enhance if we detect a particular capability. For example, providing a link to a native maps application where someone can get a much more immersive and rich experience with this location information. Now, as screen size enhances, what we'll do is switch from this little image to that interactive embedded map, full of all of its rich interactive goodness. This additional content, however, only comes in when screen size and capabilities are available. We're not trying to force it everywhere, especially on devices that can't handle it very well.
So he explains it actually much better than I just did. The poor devices just can't handle it if you put your desktop website on the small devices. So what are the other benefits of mobile first? There's actually a lot of terms under mobile first. So there's mobile first, but inside you need to have a content first approach. Because on the small screen, you have to decide, what do I want to show? You have to ask the client, okay, what is your important information? What do you want to show on this mobile page? What you don't want to show is apparently not important enough. So you have a content-first approach that's really focusing on what the client wants. I just talked about future-proof. You're future-proof for the devices that will come in the future. It's performance first because you don't force the heavyweight files onto the mobile browsers. And it's progressive enhanced in the sense that once things get bigger, they get more possibilities. Or once devices get better, they get more possibilities. So there might be people in your environment that say, well, Jelmer, all this talk is nice, but I have to make this mobile website now, and it's going to cost me a lot of time. I personally disagree with that. I don't think it costs more time. I think in the end, it saves you time. I think maybe this person doesn't understand yet what responsive really means. Or this person maybe doesn't understand yet what mobile first means. Maybe this person doesn't have the technology available to make this, or is not really willing to think on an abstract level. So what I would do is try to convince this person about what is responsive, what is mobile first, and why it will save you time in the end, because you, for example, have less issues with new browsers that come in the future or new devices. All right, is there anyone who disagrees right now about mobile first, about the definition, or is it clear like this? Okay, I'm gonna assume it's clear. Let's go to the Agile Workflow. So we at Netflix also we have a lot of big projects with an Agile Workflow, which means we Scrum. We have a Scrum project. What are the characteristics of an Agile Workflow? Things are changing fast inside the team, inside the work. You get new insights maybe. You thought something was easy to make and it appears not to be. You thought the client thought something was nice to have and now he thinks it isn't. It's collaborative. You have to talk with your teammates. You have to talk things through. How are we going to make this? It's iterative because you can have multiple sprints. You have products in between the sprints that are partly finished, but are also a product that you can ship if you want. Sometimes there's a shift in priority. The client says, well, I first thought A was important, but my boss came to me and now B is important. Let's make that. So things are changing fast. And that's what I want to talk about. How can we make our technology like this that it supports these changes? There are some consequences for doing a responsive or mobile-first approach inside an Agile workflow. I have some consequences for the communication with the client that I put into a list. I named it things clients ask who don't understand responsive, and maybe I'm going to make a book about it, so I put a little C behind it, because I thought it was kind of funny. I hope, or I guess, some of you will recognize these sentences in your conversation with your clients. So suppose you have a designer, you have a website, you're talking with your client, and the client says, yeah, can you put all my products inside the screen at all times? Because the user has to scroll down now, and it's really annoying. Yeah, the things the clients ask who don't understand responsive, that's one of them. No, we can't. You go on to explain that default doesn't really exist because of the range of devices. This art that I just showed with all the different screen sizes, you show them this. He said, no, we can't. There are too many devices to support this, and you have to go with the flow in this perspective. Yeah, and then he says, this text we have, it should always be over 2 lines, it's a text about 2 lines, it should be over 2 lines. Well, yeah, we have this window and it's moving all the time and it's becoming smaller and bigger, so yeah, it's not going to work like that. It's not responsive. If you want a text over 2 lines, you should make a painting. Why don't these 2 columns, why don't they have the same height? And then you go on, well, because there's different text in them, and we changed the text because you asked, and now the column is less high. That's how the website works, that's how the web works. So again, you have to explain this responsive thing. These are all some clues that the clients actually need more explanation about responsive. It needs more explanation about mobile first. This is also very often asked, be like align the text with the bottom of this image or align the text with the top of this image. But yeah, it doesn't really work like that. If you change the text, it doesn't work anymore. Of course, now we have flexbox techniques and such, but it shouldn't be the first approach that is, in this case, the first choice. It should be the last choice, in my opinion. This is one of my personal favorites also. Your client looks at this website and he says, yeah, you know, it all has to fit on my screen, so make it all smaller. Just take 10 pixels of everything or something. And then you say, well, yeah, it's nice on your screen, but we have like 3,997 other screens that are like not your size. So yeah, you choose what you want, but let's make an investigation about this and see how we handle it. Maybe you also have a designer that asks you in the communication, like, what resolution do we give you the designs? And then you say, I have 3,997 resolutions for you that you can make the designs on. We want them tomorrow. Now, of course, this is not how it works. Yeah, again, an indication that you should explain what responsive is. Manage the expectations. Say, it will not look like this on other sizes. There are also, of course, consequences for people that do design and concepts in your company. The client is sometimes going to come to you and say, I have an idea for a new page or this new story that we're going to make. You know, we already have this component X and we're going to use it on the new page as well. So, is your code prepared for that? Does it allow the element to be placed in another place? Maybe yes, then you did good. For example, buttons. Buttons are a good case of moving them to other locations and allowing them to be moved. But maybe there are a lot more components on your website. So actually we're talking about component-based stuff, right? We're talking about a system, a design system that works for you, that works for the website, that you can show and that is official, that says this is our component system, this is what you can use. You have to, of course, discuss with the client and what this deliverable is going to be, because maybe you want to deliver a style guide, maybe you want to deliver a design system, maybe the design is already there and it's not made like that by the designer. So you have to discuss with the client what is your deliverable going to be. Also, you have to define some constraints. For example, you have, like I said, the button, and it has a large version and a small version. But can it also have a medium version, or a small medium, or an extra large? And can the border radius change or not? And do we change the colors? Are there 3 colors per color, or maybe only 1? So you have to define these constraints. Of course, don't forget to sell also your style guide or your style or your design system that you make. It's a feature that they get, and you make it public maybe, or you make it public privately for them. And you can sell it, so don't forget that this is a feature that they get, and you can make it really good. This is an example of an automated style guide actually that we use in some projects here at Netflix. You see here it has definitions of colors, and the important thing to note here is that this thing is generated from your code. So if you, for example, have your CSS, you have a button here, you have an explanation about what it does, you put some HTML in there, and the nice thing is that we changed this product to make it so that the HTML is included automatically, that you don't have to paste it in here. That's better, we think. And you actually write CSS. What comes out is your automatic style guide, of course. It's like the button that you just made with the explanation, the title, and the HTML. A good example of this is to go to the Lonely Planet, or actually just Google style guide Lonely Planet, and you'll find this. They have a really big style guide of their website with all these components, design elements, even widgets and JS components. Here is a list of all these components that they use, everybody can just see this. You can just go there, you can see what their whole team uses. It's very useful, I think, for maybe new persons on your team or new persons inside the Lonely Planet that are not up to date with what styles there already are. We also have a product here at Netflix that is called Hello Workspace. It's a social intranet. So it's a place where people in their work environment communicate, like Facebook, internally. Here we also need to define the constraints. For example, if we make Hello Workspace for a different client, what can we change? Can we change the background color or not? And if so, how can we change it? Can we make it black? Do we allow it to be black or not? Also, can we move this button, if the clients ask it, can we move this search field or this button to the side? Can we move it to the footer? If we want it in the navigation menu that is here, can we move it there? Is it possible? So here, again, you have to define these constraints and stick with them, because you have to sell your product. And you can't put 100 hours into your product every time you sell it. Is there somebody maybe who is already at this stage? Like, who says, we understand responsive, we understand mobile first, or maybe only responsive, and says, we have a style guide. Is there somebody who made a style guide, or? Yeah, okay, good. Is there somebody who sometimes received a desktop design and tried to make a responsive website of this, maybe? Okay, good. So we see there is some progress to be made here, yet we're not there yet. I see, okay. But suppose, in this hypothetical situation, that we're already there. Your entire team knows what responsive means. And your entire team means also your client, because the client with Scrum is inside your team. They know what mobile first means. They know what the design implications are, what you have to communicate, and your entire workflow is agile. And you have set up a design system, all that. Okay, you can put up some balloons and you get a sticker because it's really good. But now you have to make the thing. You have to build the front end. How do you do that? No. That's maybe the most interesting part of this, of course, seeing we are with front enders. We're going to try to create an agile front end. This is not working. Yeah. So I found these things by Brad Frost, which is a cool guy to follow also. He's talking about design systems on his website, and it's really informative, really good stuff, I think. And I found some terms that a design system needs to be. It needs to be official, there needs to be one thing, that's it. People need to be able to approach it, for example. It needs to be agnostic, which means I have to be able to place the thing that I have in another context and it should still work. This is a good guy to follow, in my opinion. So all these definitions come basically down to Lego. We actually need to make Legos in code. That would be super awesome to have. Some companies, they think they already have Legos. And then you go to their website. You make a page with all the buttons that they actually show on their website. And you see, well, those are not at all the same buttons. These are like 20 different buttons in one website. This is one website. And it's actually by the US government, so you should expect that they have like some kind of a design system or something. But apparently, yeah, it's getting really confusing with this if you see this. So we need to make a system. And the reason that this happens is often that there is a thinking going on in page designs. Designer designs a page, and somebody gets made to make it, or gets told to make it. Next time another front-ender gets contacted, gets told to make the next page. That's how you get all the different buttons. So A List Apart has made a nice guide, in my opinion. It's called An Exercise for Everyone from Pages to Patterns. It's a nice practical exercise to make your website component-based. I'm going to show to you how we did it. This is an example website. It's about Breda Photo, which is an event in Breda. It's nice. I would go there if you are here in September and October. If we scroll down a little, this is the magazine page. It's a blog. You see that there are many components. let's take one of these components, like for example this one, and let's think about what it is. Okay, so we have a picture and a link and it goes to a blog, there's a text. Let's try to give it a name. Does anybody have an idea about seeing this page? What would you name this? You have to make this in code. What's the name of this thing?
Section. Card.
Yeah, okay, cool. Maybe there's also a different level, because here it's also sort of like a label. You could make that a different component, of course. The challenge is to go as deep as possible. The challenge is to make components that are so reusable that this component is actually 6 components. Okay, but how do you name it? Because you can't name it after the content, because if there's different content, it doesn't work anymore. You can't name it after where you place it, because if you place it somewhere different, it doesn't work. You can name it after how it looks, because if your main color is orange and your client changes its main color to blue, the component is really weird. So there is a quote, a famous quote online by Phil Carlton that says, there are 2 hard things in computer science: cache invalidation and naming things. And cache invalidation, I don't know what it is. Naming things, I do know. There's also a running internet joke that says 2 hard things in computer science: cache invalidation, naming things, and 1 off by 1 errors. It's only for nerds joke. So how can we name things? How do we do that? Well, maybe it's good if we make it a team effort. Let's see this. Let's take a look at this method from pages to patterns that was on a list apart. We have this component here, this website with that component. Let's print the website out, or if you're good in Photoshop, let's just put the website in Photoshop and cut the website in all the components that we have. Let's take scissors, cut the website in all parts. And then let's group the elements together. We see we have some buttons here, we have some cards, we have some icons, they're all together here. And then if we've done that, let's all take, with my whole team, a post-it. We're going to sit around the table, my designer is there, my content writer is here, my maybe marketing specialist and me as a front-ender, we're all there. We're going to take a post-it, we're going to keep it for ourselves, and we're going to write a name. For example, for this card. I named it card, indeed, but by then we didn't know yet what the name was. So we all write down a name, and we say 1, 2, 3, and we put it on the table. Maybe I have written card, maybe the other person has written post, or blog post, or author blog, I don't know. So that's a nice thing. The thing that you have a difference is a nice thing. You have to talk about it. So why did you name it card? Why did you name it post? Well, maybe because I think it is a blog post and it should have blog post content. Well, what if there's no blog post inside it? What if it's an author? Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's name it card. And that's how you go through the whole website with these cut parts. And then you come to some conclusions about what actually the parts mean on your website. It's really good to do this. I did it and it's really fun also. This is also an image by a list apart itself, and you see really good here. There are different opinions on one thing, but in the end one stays and you choose for that. A next step you can take if you are with some developers is everybody grabs a component, the same, and you make HTML and CSS for it. After that, you come together and you see if you all made the same or not. And if you didn't make the same, why did you not make it the same? What variables did you choose? Why was your width in percentages and mine was in pixels or some other thing? This you can do with a lot of parts and delete it. Only if you are with developers, of course. So talking about coding, how can we approach this coding? How can we do it in such a way that the Agile environment supports it? I think it's important to look at your own coding conventions and see if they are still true, to test it. to see, well, we did everything in pixels, but is it still the right way to do it? To present some challenges or some conventions. This is a piece of code that I found by Harry Roberts. He is CSS Wizardry on Twitter. This is not normally how you would do it, right? This is setting the font size for all the page on one size, and all the headers, all of them are the same size. They're just a little bit bigger than the text size. Why would you do this? Because you have defined components. All your components are classes. You should define, excuse me, you should add the classes to the titles if you see that they fit this component. If you want a component, you should name it. If you don't put a class on it, it's just a little bit bigger than text, which is almost always good for a title. So that's a nice convention that you should ask yourself, well, are we still doing the things in the right way? Next thing, for example, absolute units are usually the wrong answer. It's said by a presentation by somebody who works in the, I believe, in the CSS working group, something like that. This is a slide in her presentation that shows how you can think about your sizing units, for example. So previously, maybe you think, I made all my components in pixels, is it still the right way? For example, if I have a button and I have padding, what sizing unit do I give to the padding? And what is it based on? Is it based on the font size? If I make the font size bigger of the button, does the padding need to change? Yes. So we use ems, because ems is based on the font size, because ems are the font size of the button. What you find out is that actually the window size doesn't matter, almost never. We think this responsive thing is about the window, but it's not. The responsive thing is about in which part of the layout is your element. For example, if I put my card inside a sidebar, it should still work. It doesn't matter how wide my screen is, it matters how wide my container is. So maybe you should use percentages a lot more, or viewport size for headers or footers, or something like, I don't know, rems, if it's based on the size of the root, the font size of the root. So my point is to challenge your conventions and do some critical thinking. Some other technical tips that I think are useful. Try to go for modular CSS as much as possible. So try something like BEM or SMAX, or try something like a modular defined approach to CSS. Don't use IDs if you're making a component ever. You can only make one on your page and then it's done. So it's not modular. Try to avoid nesting the selectors, because when you do, you're making dependencies on dependencies on dependencies. And once you take the button out of your navigation and your selector is nav button, it doesn't work anymore. The specificity graph I'm going to show in the next slide. Important one is embrace the new technologies where possible. So look at the new technologies, ask yourself, is it still necessary for this Internet Explorer browser that we are going to, I don't know, that we're going to support feature A? Maybe they don't need it. Maybe it's good if we just take the new technology, let them see the old thing, and it's good. What is the specificity graph? This is a graph of a style sheet. On the y-axis you see specificity, which means, for example, an ID is very high, one class is very low, multiple tags are, I think, somewhere in the middle. I don't know. This is the location in the style sheet on the x-axis. Why is this a bad graph? Because when you are a next developer, you come here, you add a class here, because there needs to be a new component in your agile development. You add it here, you find out it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because right here there's something like very specific, some class name inside an ID that is messing up your code. So what Harry Roberts says is you spend eventually more time undoing the effects of high specificity in your CSS, and you want to spend more time on actually making the component. So what should your graph look like? And you can generate this with using a tool. You can generate this graph for your CSS file. It should look like this. You should make some very low selectors in the beginning, and maybe in the end where you have some emergency classes like important or IDs, put them in the end. Try to use not the important stuff, by the way. But this is a nice graph. It should look like this. So try to build your CSS file also in this way, that you use classes, stop nesting, don't do the IDs, and if you do them in the end. Some other challenges or approaches to CSS conventions are functional CSS. I don't know if you heard about this. It's a kind of a new way to write CSS. And it's not really component-driven design, but it's component-driven CSS. So what you see, these weird classes here, is like, I want to have a margin top of 1. We don't know what 1 is. Maybe it's like 10 pixels, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 40, you don't know. But you defined it somewhere. I also want a padding of 2. And I want a background of white. Those classes altogether make one component. So this could, for example, be the car. Why would you do that? Because your CSS appears to be like 50% smaller if you do this. The question is if you want this, of course. The question is your code important or is your component-driven design important? Also, how are you going to do responsive? You have to add some classes if you do responsive. You have to do like, I want the margin bottom of 0 when we are in the medium responsive breakpoint. I'm not sure if this is useful for all your projects. I'm not sure if it's useful for my projects. I'm just saying, maybe it's nice to look at this. Maybe it's nice to consider it. Maybe we should take the ideas that are behind this and develop ourselves further. So I come to the conclusions. We went from responsive to mobile first to an agile workflow and to agile code. In the end, what is necessary to do this right, in my opinion? You have to see if everybody in your team really understands responsive, especially the client. Do they really know what are the consequences of a responsive design? Do they also know what is mobile first? Do they really know how they should deliver stuff, how they should deliver designs? Of course, research and set up your responsive componentized workflow and dare to challenge these coding conventions that I was just talking about. This is all for now, and I'm going to ask if you have questions. Does anybody have questions? Yeah.
Isn't a watch smaller than a phone, so why don't we start at watch first?
True, of course, yeah. I would do it. I would say do it. Yeah. I would say not many people want to see a website on their phone. Maybe I wouldn't want to. Maybe it's an assumption. I have not dived into this phone website or watch website development yet. It's a good idea. We could try. Yeah.
I don't think you can even display HTML.
No, okay. Then it's out of the deal. It's out of the deal.
Not yet.
I think Michiel knows more about this in the next presentation.
There's a watch for Android. Probably for Android.
Yeah,
it's terrible. But yeah, that's why my watch is terrible.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, the last part you've shown where you can use classes, like CSS classes, to go like an agile approach or component-driven approach in CSS.
This?
Right, this one, yeah. Right. How would you relate that to, well, let's say you're using Sass, right? Where you say, you get a component and you define a couple of mix-ins, and then you just define components, and that's just a set of mix-ins. Is that the way you would do it, or I don't know?
Yeah, good question. You could, of course, also make combined classes I don't know if that's really the idea of this, but you could make a card class that includes these other classes, and then you have a card component maybe. Or you really have to have good documentation that says this is a card. If you want to create a card, you need these classes, like these 6 or 7 or 18 classes you needed to make it. So that's kind of a challenge, I think. How are you going to do this? You basically only need one setup, and then you're done. So you define like this margin 1, you define it once, and yeah, it keeps being margin 1, also if you make a new component. So actually you're done after one sprint, maybe. I don't know if that's good news for the developer or bad news, maybe. Yeah, that's something we would need to think about. Yeah, there are different approaches, I think.
I want to add something to that question. I think it's very interesting to think about how you approach something like naming conventions in these classes, because I suppose there are going to be so much classes needed and some components if you use a lot of custom styling that you want to combine these indexings. But the point is, how far would you go to componentize, or how do you call it, these classes? Because you talk about maybe font styling, maybe you call about coloring, maybe you call about compositing, maybe you call about a lot of different things, maybe even about sound or something, I don't know. But
yeah.
How far would you go? I think that's what I want to ask.
That's the real question, indeed. That's like you would need some sort of basis. It would be terrible to define like Arial font for all of your components that you can just put on the body and it's good.
And then we're back to CSS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but I think
it's
that's
like,
just
it's
like every
returning
program.
back to the style that should be.
Yeah, it's yeah. So I'm not saying you should use this right now. I was just saying take a look at this, and there are certainly points we can learn from this if we want to make it really componentized.
I think at that point it's more like a decision between adding more CSS to your file and making your CSS file bigger, or adding more classes to your HTML and making your HTML bigger.
But it depends on what would you like to do.
I can imagine if you're making, for example, a prototype, and your client says, what would this look like? And you can say, I can make it in 1 day. You can use this, because you can download several of these pre-defined things, and you can just use it to make a prototype in like 1 day, maybe. And then after that, you can go about making a real CSS system and making it really componentized. Yeah, I'm not really convinced either, really, that this is now the way to go, but it's a nice, it's a nice way. Nice thinking. I think that's it.
Okay.
Right.